How staff lines were drawn by the Bach family. An experimental approach using the same tools and materials. Trying to recreate the same results by observations and trial and error. Handmade staff lines are as personal as a voice. They reflect personal condition and mentality. They tell if you're tired or suffering or are in the prime of your life. Show how you handle practical questions. Whether you conform to how things are normally done or whether you choose your own path. Staff lines were made with a 5-pointed pen called a rustrum. A tool with a low survival rate, and documents hardly say anything about it. They came in different shapes. Different forms means different behavior, and that gives us a distinguishing feature of the shape that Johann Sebastian Bach's rastrum may have had. We can see when Bach started using a new rastrum. It takes a while for the 5 nibs to produce equivalent lines and for the ink to flow evenly. The outer lines in particular manifest themselves more powerfully for quite some time. But it doesn't take extremely long before they too join the ranks. It is typical behavior that one of the modern rastra shows alike. Brass nibs are delicate to handle. Due to the different shapes, the force distribution at the outer points is guided slightly differently. This effect gradually disappears with use. Bach's son, Willem Friedemann, was given a blank book at the age of 9 to learn calligraphy. This could reflect his own history as a master calligrapher. Johann Sebastian Bach was orphaned at the age of 9. He entered the household of an extraordinary calligrapher. His brother, Johann Christoph, who was 14 years older. Christoph's vast score collections show a refined taste and a sharp eye for artistically interesting pieces. Pages like these are regularly described as empty on Bach Digital, but you are looking at an exquisitely executed masterpiece. Christoph had full control over page layout. His working method betrays calculated planning and measuring. Margins, distances, straight lines, hand positioning, ink flow, everything is well balanced and executed with the utmost care and noticeable drawing pleasure. The quality is so high that one takes it for granted, and it is easy not to see. This is Johann Sebastian Bach's calligraphy teacher. In some manuscripts, we can compare their handwriting from page to page. Christoph's hand, here above, had a deep impact on Sebastian. The notation shows many similarities. But there are differences too. Sebastian prefers not to touch the ruler when making a staff. Positioning a grand staff happens outside, quick and dirty. Christoph excelled at crystal clear writing in a limited space. In this, Sebastian was equal. Complex lines were noted with astonishing ease. Christoph took the time to carefully prepare everything. A ruler was helpful. In some cases, Sebastian did use a ruler, as in here, for bar lines. But this inflexible grid conflicted with his creativity and needs. 16ths exceed the limit of the prescribed space. Sebastian needed an adaptable system and worked with rough estimates. For this composition with 6 voices on a grand stave, he initially aimed for 2 bifolia. On the first 2 pages, we see 6 double systems and large top and bottom margins. Halfway through, he adjusted his estimate and drew 7 grand staves with a wide bottom margin. On the last page, he adjusted it again, back to 6. This was not enough, but now the royal empty margins of the last 2 folia came into view. He even had a smaller size rustrum for cases like these. Many times his tools were not in the right place when he needed them most. A quick and dirty solution, a hand-drawn wobbly extra staff, was an option. A high workload and unimaginable productivity made efficient notation a necessity. Quick decisions were paired with a series of fixes that could be a bit time-consuming. Bach always applied small side margins and placed his rustrum nicely vertically at the beginning. The ink flow sometimes falters, and he supplemented it with his quill. The tip had to be kept horizontal. The change in opacity on the right tells of muscle tension when this point is reached. Drawing a straight staff is a complex challenge. Wrist and elbow must make a complicated twist. Gottlob Meissner studied at the Thomasschule and would become one of Bach's most important copyists. Here, his right margin finish offers room for improvements. Inexperience causes upwardly curved staff lines that sag far to the right. The rustrum moves over the edge of the paper. Many covers carefully created by Bach were used by his copyists as scrap paper to accommodate this. Some of the features mentioned gives us language to describe what can be seen on the first page of this cantata. Staff lines are bent down in the middle. Ink stutters at the bottom 4 staff lines. The rustrum is angular at the left. Bach had turned his paper upside down. The initial poor flow of ink tells us something about how he preserved his rustrum. Gum arabic, the binding agent of his ink, needs time to re-dissolve in water. With the rustrum stored dry, any remaining gum arabic glues nips and hinders flow. There is another clue that suggests this page has been turned. This ink drop falls in a characteristic pattern and reveals where Bach placed his inkwell. This photo, taken in Bach's writing studio, shows an empty room. But paper stores information in many ways and even tells about the situation on his desk. This engraving from 1736 likely portrays Bach. 2 inkwells are visible, one presumably for red and one for the dark inks, brown and black. Numerous images show common shapes of inkwells. A holder with a low center of gravity prevents a smaller inkwell from tipping over. It appears that Bach did not use the holder. That was a risk, and it indeed went wrong at least a dozen times. Events like these document the positioning of the inkwell. In this area, it happens at the moment when the text speaks of an accident. A characteristic counter-movement follows. Ink flows to the bottom left. This could be the result of a slanted writing table. The pattern seems to suggest that he moved his desk from Köthen to Leipzig. There was another thread lurking that may have been the cause of his most spectacular repair. Pipe smoking is described in an aria in the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach. The text shows that Bach also regularly lost sight of his tobacco stopper. Typically, he repaired the burning pipe by hand and burnt his fingers. Burning crumbs posed a risk to his scores. Here, he extinguished the fire with a boar bristle brush dipped in ink. It must have been a terrible day when the neat score of his great passion was seriously damaged. Nothing is known about the nature of the damage, but his pipe may have played a major role. For the repair, a strip was cut from 7 folia and the replacement was glued on. This must have been the work of a bookbinder. The transition is perfect, with the smoothness of a papyrus roll. The bookbinder must have sanded the edges with a pomade stone. The result of this level of craftsmanship surprised Bach. When rewriting the staff, he did not use his rustrum on the first page. Instead, he used his quill and compiled lines with short waves. Neat, patient, and under control, But this was unnecessarily cautious. It was a moment of happiness when he was able to use his rustrum on the next page without any problems. Darker opacity at the left and angular endings tell that he again turned his sheet upside down. The calligraphy of Johann Sebastian Bach was an example for his students. Here we see his son Willem Friedemann covering the light ink of staff lines with a dark one. Copies of Anna Magdalena show that Sebastian's style can be reproduced with great similarity, with loving attention and keen observation. Her handmade reproductions have photocopy qualities. That Sebastian used the bottom margin to fix the fit was not a reason for her to reconsider layout. Sebastian's tailor-made setup, designing the layout based on experience, intuition, and a carpenter's eye, is difficult to master. Yet, by doing so, he surpassed his older brother and teacher artistically for the breathing liveliness. For some, Sebastian's freehand method was beyond their capabilities. The music on this copy by Emanuel Bach shows reduced motor skills and physical problems. In contrast, the staff lines are excellent. Physical limitations force them to rely on a ruler as a guide and a needle to point out marks. Sebastian's copy of a motet composed by his uncle, calligraphed at the end of his life for his own funeral, shows his skills were still outstanding. Sebastian had a refractive error in the optical system of his eyes, but could see nearby objects clearly. So, sometimes seemingly objective staff lines are personal and subjective. You can see Bach, literally, because many scores hold his S-shaped head hairs with the gum arabic from the ink. Somehow it is touching to see that Anna Magdalena had thick black hair. A cookbook can be compiled based on stains in Bach scores. Figuratively, calligraphic knowledge can contribute to insight into the recipes of his compositions. For this score, one of his small children helped with the melody line, neatly placed on the staff. Practical experience with calligraphy is valuable for any subject in Bach literature. Yet it is somewhat of a neglected topic that deserves more attention and understanding.